Hello, mystery readers. I'm Alexandra Amor. This is It's a Mystery Podcast, and I'm here today with Shannon Baker. Hi, Shannon.
Hi, how are you?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm great. I'm down in sunny Tucson. It's beautiful here.
No rain today?
No, yeah, we have rain like 5 days a year.
So,
Today
yes.
isn't one of them.
No. Okay, good. So you're staying dry while Irma is trying to destroy other parts of the country.
That's so sad.
It's terrible, yeah. So let me introduce our listeners to you. Shannon Baker is the author of the Kate Fox mystery series set in the isolated cattle country of the Nebraska Sandhills. Kirkus says that Baker serves up a ballsy heroine, a colorful backdrop, and a surprising ending. She also writes the Nora Abbott mystery series featuring Hopi Indian mysticism and environmental issues. Shannon makes her home in Tucson, where she enjoys cocktails by the pool, breathtaking sunsets, a crazy Weimaraner, and killing people in the pages of her books, of course. She was voted Rocky Mountain Fiction Writers 2014 and 2017 Writer of the Year, which is very exciting. Shannon, and I understand you just got back today from that
I
conference.
did just flew in this morning. It was so much fun. If there are any writers out there and you're looking around for a writers conference, Colorado Gold is always in Denver in September, and it's a fabulous conference. You should go.
Excellent. Oh, good. Okay, well, thanks for that plug. So let's start by talking about Kate Fox. And so maybe tell us a little bit about her background.
So Kate Fox is a 30-something. She lives in the Nebraska Sandhills, and that's someplace I lived for 20 years. So it has a population density of 0.95 people per square mile. And it's the Sandhills cover about 30,000 square miles. It takes up a quarter of the state of Nebraska.
Wow.
So it's a huge empty place. And Kate lives there. She's related to everybody in the community. She's she's one of 9 kids, and she's related to everybody. She's 4th generation, so she's a total insider. And when book 1 opens, she's just living the exact life she's always wanted. She's living on a cattle ranch. She's managing her husband's cattle ranch, and he's the sheriff. And she's taken in her niece, loves her niece, her high school age niece, and then all hell breaks loose, of course, as it does in mystery books. And she got a call in the middle or late at night, and her husband's been shot, and a local rancher's been murdered, and her niece has gone missing. So she has to solve the crime.
Nice. Oh, that's fantastic. And I loved it. You mentioned it here, but I read somewhere too that she's sort of living this life that's perfect for her, that she loves. And then it feels like a big wrench kind of gets thrown in the works, and she's sort of tossed in at the deep end. And I thought that must have been such an interesting thing to do to a character.
You always want to put your characters, just put them through the crucible and see what happens to their character. If people, it's like real people. If you just see them in everyday life without any stress, everybody's lovely. But put a little stress on them, and then you get to find out what they're really made of. So that's always a lot of fun.
Yes, it is for writers, isn't it? Exactly. And the Nebraska Sandhills were something I had never heard of before. And so when I was reading that description, I went and looked them up, and it's a fascinating bit of geography. Maybe could you tell our listeners a little bit about it?
Sure. It is actually it's like the Sahara Desert in topography. So it's just dunes on dunes, but they're all grass covered. And so the only thing really you can do with that, because the land is so unstable, is grow grass. So in the Sandhills, their main crop is grass, and what eats grass is cattle. So the cattle to people ratio out there is about 50 to 1. There's a lot of cows out there.
Yeah.
But it also sits on the top of the world's largest aquifer, and it sits on the deepest part of the world's largest aquifer, which is the Ogallala Aquifer. So there's ample groundwater, and it's very, very close to the surface. And in a lot of places, it actually touches the surface. So you have lots and lots of very shallow surface lakes everywhere. So there's a surprising amount of birds out there, a lot of birds.
Wow.
It's a really interesting place.
Yeah, when I started reading about it, I was just fascinated. And one of the things I don't know if it was a Wikipedia listing I was reading or whatever, it said that because the ground is so unstable, it's just the dunes, Really, the only crop or thing that has ever grown there is grass. And so
Right.
it's sort of one of the most unaltered places, landscape wise in the United States because of that. It's sort of never been industrialized, and our kind of more traditional crops have never been grown there because they won't grow. And I thought that was really fascinating too.
Yeah. So actually, the king, when it was first settled, it was settled very late. So in
Okay.
1880s was the first time people started coming out there, and they had the Kincaiders came out, and they plowed up wide swaths of land, and you can still see it now,
Oh, wow.
because it doesn't grow back quickly. And when it did grow back, it was invasive weeds. So you can still see places out there where they plowed it all up. But a really interesting thing, maybe not to everybody, but I found it really interesting. When I was living out there, I interviewed this old guy. He was 100 years old, had been there, had come to the Sandhills when he was 3, I think, with his parents. And so he knew everything about it. And he told me, this was Albert, and he talked really slowly. And he told me that when he was young, the hills were actually really sandy. There wasn't much grass out there. And he said you could track the way he talked, he was so great. You could track a gray wolf across the sand in the hills.
Oh,
And
amazing.
yeah, so when the ranchers got out there, they actually were really good stewards, and they took care of the land, and now it's really grass covered. And if it depends on your sensibilities, but to most of us, they actually improved the land. It isn't exactly the same as it was, but now it's more stable and grass covered. So.
Right. Okay. And you mentioned the population density or lack thereof. And when I was when I was reading about Kate, you used words in your descriptions like isolated and solitude. And so I wondered about that landscape sort of being a metaphor for her personal space, if that's the right way to ask the question. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, so Kate loves her solitude. She loves being alone. But she has a fierce loyalty, and she's not always allowed to be alone because she's got this giant family, and they keep dragging her in, and they keep interfering in her life. So that's very much this push-pull she's got, where she really loves her family, but she just wishes they would just leave her alone. So that's always fine. And then, of course, the loss. She just loses everything. Basically, everything she thinks that she values, she loses.
Wow.
And has to start all over again.
And then I gather that
there's humor in it. It's not.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's not all dark and gloomy. No. And so I gather that she really kind of picks herself up because she starts taking a sheriff's course, the Sheriff's Academy course.
Well, that's actually that's a bridging. Well, not in book 1.
Not in book 1. Okay, yeah.
There is a spoiler between book 1 and book 2, so now that book 2 is out, yes, she does become sheriff eventually.
Oh, okay.
Not in book 1.
Okay, great. And then I read too. It was in an article you wrote, or an interview with you, about your genre finding you. It may have been on your blog, actually. And you talked about how the story started. You had written a story about Greek gods meddling with a divorcee in the Nebraska Sandhills, and that you really it was kind of all over the place and all different kinds of genres mixed in, and that you really had to narrow your focus to drill down to have the book be a mystery. Can you talk about that process a little bit?
I can. When writing books, and this, writing books is so hard, and there's so much you need to know. And when I started out, one of the things I didn't know was about genre. I didn't know there were, that readers expected certain things from different things. So for me, starting out when I did, which was, well over 20 years ago, for me, not having that option to indie pub was really a big thing, because I probably would have taken that book that was just all over the place and self-published it, and it wouldn't have and then just been written the next one without having to learn all this other stuff. So by having to face all this rejection for so many years, I learned how to hone it down. And yes, it isn't formulaic. There are romance and mystery and thrillers. They have a kind of a you need to do this, you need to do that.
Yeah.
And it sounds so formulaic, but it's not. It really makes sense, and it makes a story come together. And especially when you add readers' expectations to what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. So that's what I think. And I did actually fall into mystery writing. I didn't read a lot of mysteries when I was growing up. I know this is sacrilege, but I have never read Nancy Drew, and I've only listened to Agatha Christie, and only that after I sold this book. So I thought, bouncing all over like that, finally settled in, and I looked at the market, and this was a long time ago. And I looked at the market, and I thought, thrillers are selling. That's what's selling. I'm going to write a thriller, and so I did. Mm-hmm. And then, that was published, but not published well. I call it a nano press. And then I wrote another thriller, and I sold that one to Midnight Ink. That was the first Nora book. Okay. And when it was accepted, my editor said, so is this, first of all, this isn't a thriller. It's a mystery.
Wow.
And I said, okay, cool. And she said, is it a series or a standalone? And I thought, well, how stupid do I look? It's a series.
Yes.
So then, not ever having read series at all, I kind of threw myself into this trial by fire. So now I read a lot of mysteries, mostly contemporary mystery writers. I don't have that canon behind me, but I do read a lot of mysteries now.
Oh, good. Yeah. And one of the things we should mention too is that there's 2 new Kate Fox stories coming out soon, like in October 2017. So you have a short story called Close Enough and a novel, Dark Signal, right? Why don't you tell us a little bit about both of those? Okay, so Close Enough is, we're calling it Forge. My publisher is calling it the gateway drug. Okay. So it's 99 cents, and it's 26 pages. So I don't know how short is short, but it's a long short story or a short novella. I don't know. But it bridges book 1 and book 2, but it really, I think, gives a flavor for what Kate is and how my voice, Kate's voice. Mm-hmm. So that's the bridging between book 1 and book 2. And then book 2, Dark Signal, is coming out October 17th. It's coming out 2 days after VoucherCon ends. So sadly, it won't be there for VoucherCon, but I know. They said, we might give some away. So, there's that. But Kate is newly sworn in, and there's a death on the railroad at night. It's cold. It's January. I had to really make that up because I haven't been in Nebraska for a year. It was really nice to have to pretend I remembered the cold. Right. Yeah.
But there's a death on the railroad, on the train, and she is the only one that believes it's murder, so she needs to solve that.
Okay.
And of course, her personal life is still in chaos. Everybody trying to figure out what she ought to do and letting her know and interfering in things.
Oh goodness, yeah, big families. They're great at giving advice, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, do you have plans for more Kate Fox books?
I do. The third book is turned in to my editor. I don't have a contract for it yet, but she's looking it over. So if anybody has good thoughts, send good thoughts that way. And it takes place. It deals a lot with the Lakota reservation and the border towns, the edge of the res type of thing. So it's a little bit more serious, but not terribly. I mean, there's still humor in it, but it really deals with some serious issues that you can't really laugh.
Right. Okay. Well, let's segue now and talk about Nora Abbott. So there are 3 books. Okay. 3 books in that series, and so maybe tell us. They're set in Arizona, where you are, correct?
Well, one is.
Okay.
With the first one, Tainted Mountain is set in Flagstaff, which is not where I'm at. Completely different topography. We moved to Flagstaff. And when we moved there, it's 7,000 feet, and it's a mountain range. And so when we moved in, there was this big controversy about man-made snow it's one of the oldest ski resorts, is right outside of Flagstaff. And climate change and things have made it so it's not getting a reliable snowpack. So the Chamber of Commerce types decided that it would be good to pump water up there. Treated wastewater is what they're using. Pump it up there and spray it all over the slopes. But, those slopes are sacred to 12 separate tribes.
Wow.
And of course they didn't want it. And so I thought, if no one really dies in real life over this, I can sure make it up. So that's how that book started.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, I thought it was going to be a standalone.
Oh.
And then we moved right away up to Boulder, Colorado.
Yeah.
So I set the second book in Boulder, Colorado. And when I turned that in, my editor sent it back and she said, "Oh no, you don't have Hopi in here. You have to have Hopi in this book." And I thought, Hopi don't go to the Rocky Mountains. But they did this time.
Okay.
And then the third book is set in Moab, Utah.
Utah. My goodness.
And
so Nora gets around.
She does, because you know what? I moved 7 times in 10 years.
Oh, wow.
So, I kind of made her a Rolling Stone as well.
Yeah. And so how are Kate and Nora different?
They're very different. Kate is very confident. She's self-contained. She knows what she wants. She's really competent. She can take care of things. She doesn't ask for a lot of help. Nora is a little bit less secure. She's a little insecure. She doesn't, she's kind of at the beginning. She has an arc, and she actually comes around. But Nora is an environmentalist. Kate lives on the land. Two different, coming at it from two different ways. They both love the land, but in different ways. So.
Oh, interesting.
And
And I think I read somewhere too that Nora has a Kachina guide. Is that right?
Yeah. Something like that. Yeah. She sees visions, and she's never sure whether they're real or not.
Really? Wow. And so what got you to fold that kind of thing into a mystery?
So when I started researching for this book that I was going to write, I was researching the different tribes, and I came across the Hopi tribe. Yeah. And they're so fascinating. They're one of the smallest, poorest tribes, one of the oldest cultures in the whole world. And I read somewhere that if you draw a line straight across the globe from the Hopi reservation to the Tibetan reservation, it'll go from the Hopi reservation through the globe to Tibet. And the Tibetan word for moon is the Hopi word for sun, and the Hopi word for moon is the Tibetan word for sun.
No.
So there's weird stuff going on there.
Wow.
And so the Hopi they think they're responsible for the balance of the whole world. Okay. So how can I not write about them? And then when you research, I know, when you start researching about it, they're a lot of things in their cultures. Their Kachinas are sometimes ancestors, and sometimes they make appearances. So that's where that came from.
Oh, wow.
And then in book 2, in Broken Trust, we find out why he's targeted Nora.
Oh, okay.
They actually have a connection.
Oh, nice.
So.
Oh, that's great. And so you said you just handed in the 3rd Kate Fox book to your editor. So what are you working on right now?
I'm really excited about this. It's a book that is completely different than anything I've ever written. I always write with a fair amount of humor, and I don't know why, but this book that I'm writing is suspense, and it's very dark. It's got a whole different voice, a whole different rhythm. It's completely a departure from anything I've ever tried before, and I'm really excited. I finished the first draft, and I think I actually might be able to pull it off at this point. I wasn't sure.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, that's very cool. Well, we'll have to look out for that once it comes out. Um, and just getting back to Nora for a minute, I had another question too about the Hopi tribes. Ugh, and now I've lost it. Oh, silly. Oh well. Um, so
They're
you
very, very secret.
they're very
So you
secretive.
can't. Yeah, and rightfully so, because when they first, the white people first came here, and the Kachinas their religion and their culture is just deeply ingrained in their lives, and they would have these ceremonies with their Kachinas, and the Kachina masks and the whole bit, and for them they're not masks, they're actually the living being Kachinas, and the white people came up there and stole the masks. And just within the last 5 years, they were having auctions in France of these relics, which are their ancestors basically. So they got very closed up. So if you go up to the reservation, it's on 3 mesas. There are 2 of the mesas are closed. They have a sign that says "No white people allowed," and the other one is welcoming, and they'll welcome you and take you to their museum and things. But you aren't allowed to just wander willy-nilly on their reservation.
Right.
So it's of course a difficult tribe. I could have done the Navajo. They're happy to talk to you.
Right. Yes. And I remembered my question now. So you mentioned that you didn't read a lot of mysteries as a younger person, and so I wondered if you were influenced by Tony Hillerman at all with the Nora Abbott mysteries.
I wasn't. I didn't read any Tony Hillerman until after I published the books, and then I picked up Tony Hillerman, and now I read Anne Hillerman. I love her. In fact, she blurbed my last book.
Oh, fantastic! And
Dark Signal.
She's Tony's daughter, correct?
Right. Yes, and she's picked up his series, and now is featuring Bernie, the young woman, which was always in his books, but now she gets her own voice.
Okay, right. I remember seeing reference to that. Yeah, exactly. And just before we go, you mentioned BoucherCon, which is in Toronto in October, and I had Jess Lowry on the show. Monday the.
Really? Did you know Jess and I are doing the Lowry Baker double booked blog tour this month? She didn't say she was going to be on this. That's so funny because we're touring together. In fact, we're on Wicked Cozies today.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, no, it was kind of a bit of a coincidence the way I met you both, but it's been really fun, and her episode came out yesterday, September 11th, and yours will be out in a couple of weeks. Yeah, and so you guys are doing a blog tour, so I'll put some links to that in the show notes.
Okay, that would be great, yeah.
Yes, yeah. And so you'll be at BoucherCon, and it's October 12th to 15th, is that right?
Yep, I think that's right.
Something like that, in Toronto. I won't be there, unfortunately.
It'll be my first trip to Canada.
Oh, wow.
Oh, Canada.
Oh, that's great. Well, I hope you enjoy it. The weather should be nice. Yeah.
Yay, good.
Yeah, won't be as warm as Tucson, but
I'll bring a sweater.
Yeah, good idea. So just before we go, why don't you let our listeners know where they can find out more about you and your books?
Okay, you can go to my website. It's at Shannon_Baker.com. And if you sign up for my newsletter, you'll get a free short story.
Awesome. And that's different than the one we mentioned, right? Close enough.
Close enough, yes. Yeah, it's a different short story. Yeah.
In addition to that. Okay, cool. So I'll put...
and I'm not sure it's a short story. I'm not even sure what short story I'm giving away.
Well, I'll put a link to it in the show notes and people can find out.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Shannon. This has been awesome. It's been great chatting with you.
It's been great. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.